Okay, good morning, everyone. Lower Merion Synagogue is pleased to host Rabbi Anthony Manning, who teaches in many educational institutions in Yerushalayim, as well as lecturing widely in Israel, England, and the United States. Since 2017, he has been the co-director of Midrashet Tehillah, having moved from Michlelet Mevaseret Yerushalayim, where he was the senior rabbinic educator. Rabbi Manning gained his master's from Oxford University and learned in Yeshivat Eitz Chaim in London, Yeshivat HaMivtar in Efrat, Ater Yisrael in Bayit V'Gan, and at the Jerusalem Kollel of Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, from whom he has received smicha, as well as from Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, and is a member of the Rabbinical Council of America. He lives with his wife Sarah in Alon Shvut. This program is being co-sponsored with Mizrahi Israel 360 and Bnei Akiva of Lower Merion. We had hoped to be able to introduce Rabbi Manning in person and to be able to have him with our community. Obviously, because of current circumstances, that's not a possibility. I want to thank Rabbi Manning for agreeing to join us via Zoom, and in particular, I want to thank Tzvi Board for a lot of logistical assistance, and Ruth Elul, who has worked on this program for a very long time from the inception. There were a lot of logistical issues that needed to be addressed, and she put in an enormous amount of effort, time, and energy to make sure that this program could happen. So thank you, Tzvi. Thank you, Ruth. And from afar, thank you so much, Rabbi Manning.
Thank you, Rabbi Schmidman. I really appreciate your warm words of welcome. Thank you. As I just said before, I would really have loved to have been there personally right now. It wasn't to be. Please God, on another occasion. I want to thank Ruth very, very much for all of the prior work that she put in. We had a lot of conversations about how to get me to Philadelphia. I also want to thank her for babysitting my box of Sforim from the YU Sforim sale, which has been sitting in her house waiting for me to pick it up now for about 2 months. And the way things look at the moment, might be sitting in her house for quite a while longer. But as I said to her, I'm very happy for her to read any of them. And one day we'll manage to find a way to get them to me. So the first thing I just want to mention is that every now and then I'm here in Gush Etzion, which is a most incredible place to be. But every now and then the internet is not what it could be. So if I freeze or I disappear or something weird happens to me on screen, don't panic. It'll all come back to life again very shortly afterwards. I will try and make sure that I leave my shared screen up in case that works, so you can at least read the Makaras. But Mi'at Hashem, we won't have any glitches. We won't have any problems. We can work on it from now, and we can have a proper session together. Obviously, we're heading into Yom HaTzmaut, Yom HaZikaron tomorrow night, Yom HaTzmaut in a couple of nights. It's not going to be a Yom HaTzmaut like a regular one, just like it wasn't a Pesach like a regular Pesach. But the Yom HaTzmaut is going to be a little bit muted in many different ways. But there'll be lots of celebrations, but they'll all be coming to us, I think, through the internet and through Zoom and things like that. You can actually get Ruby Rivlin into your house this year directly onto your computer, because he's going to be visiting everybody by Zoom. So that's one advantage. But it's going to be an unusual year, the 72nd anniversary of Medinat Yisrael. But the ideas behind it and the thoughts that I want to try and discuss with you today are no different this year from any other year. What I want to do in the 50 or so minutes, 55 minutes we have, is I've entitled the shir Medinat Yisrael, Redemption, Confusion, and Mashiach ben Yosef. And I think all of those three ideas are ideas I really want to try and discuss with you. Redemption, Geula, this word Geula, this ephemeral word that we need to try and define what that means. People get very excited about it. People get very upset about it. You ever try and go to a shul where they don't say Reshit Smichat Geulatenu, and then you stand up and try to say Reshit Smichat Geulatenu, see what happens. Or go to a shul where they always say it on Shabbos morning and then don't say it, see what happens there. People are very much focused on this phrase of Geula, so we need to try and work out what that is. What is Geula? How does it work? The confusion, which we'll see, is built in, l'chatchila. There has to be an element of uncertainty in how this whole thing works. And then the question as to how all of this relates to Mashiach. Because people talk a lot about Mashiach, and what I want to try and do on this share is try and draw a line a little bit between Geula and Mashiach, and try and understand the difference between them, and how failure to understand that difference between them is one of the causes of conflicts, not physical conflict, Baruch Hashem, but hashkafic conflict, which sometimes can be avoided, as I hope we'll see in over the next 50 minutes or so. I'm going to make sure that everybody for now is muted, but if you have a question, please pipe up. Please raise your hand. There's all sorts of clever ways of raising your hand online. If you're good with Zoom, you can raise little blue hands and whatever, or you can just stick your actual hand up on the video, and I'll be happy to talk to you. If at any stage you have a question you want to send on the group chat, you can send a question on the group chat. That's not so difficult. You can just chat at the bottom of the screen. I'll just send everybody a message. Hi, there we are. Everyone should have got a message from me now. And you can send me a message on the group chat, or you can send a private message saying, we can't hear you, or we don't understand you, or what on earth are you talking about, or whatever. Fine. Let's let us make a start on the sheet, because I've given you, I don't know if you got the chance, it doesn't matter if you didn't, but they got a chance to see it previously. But we have a sheet here, which I'd like to share with you, which we're going to look through some of these sources. Can everybody see the sheet here? Is that the flash up on your screen now? Yes? Excellent. So if you have a look, please, at the sheet, just 1 second. Let's see. There we are. Okay, fine. Let's start at the very beginning and start talking a little bit about Geula, and maybe there'll be some surprises coming up here. Number one, the key root source for the whole idea of relating to the Geula of Yom HaAtzmaut comes out of source number one. It's a Gemara in Pesachim, which is learnt in many different ways by many different groups, but let's have a look at it together. Starts from the beginning, very beginning. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Shir Sheva Torah. Where does Shir come from? The Shirat Hayam we're talking about here. Moshe v'Yisrael Amru b'shar she'alu min hayam. So Moshe and the Jewish people said Shira, and there is, by the way, a difference between Shira and Shir. It's Shir Chadasha, Shir Chadash. There's lots of Torah on that on Seder night, which is not for now. But they said Shir when they came out of the sea. Hallel Zeh mi'amra. But where does Hallel come from? What we say as Hallel, these Tehillim. Says the Gemara, Nevi'im shebeineihem tiknu lahem liYisrael. This is a takana, this is a decree of the Nevi'im. It's very, very ancient, these Tehillim. Sheyehu omrim. Okay, so they would say them, Oisa, so they will say this Hallel, al kol perek uperek, on certain occasions in the year, the prakim of the year, meaning Chagim, etc., Chanukah as we came out, v'al kol tzara v'tzara shelo tavo aleim, and every time the Jewish people suffer a tzara, a terrible time, l'kasha nigalin, once they experience a geula, and here's the key with geula, they have to say geula, they have to say Hallel on that geula. This source in Pesachim is the obligation to say Hallel not only at certain prakim, at certain points during the year, where we say them on Chag, etc., Rosh Chodesh is a minhag, but on Chagim, etc. But we say also this Hallel on occasions of geula. Therefore, how you define this geula becomes critical. And without getting it, this shir, by the way, today is not a shir about why we say Hallel Yom HaSmod, or why we don't say Hallel Yom HaSmod, with a bracha, without a bracha, half Hallel, full Hallel, at night, during the day, at the beginning of the service. That whole discussion, by the way, I have a share on my website, which you're more than welcome to go to. There's a reference on the sheet to the website. I'm happy to give it to you at the end of the share as well. You can get a share on that now. But this source, for our purposes today, defines that what makes us want to sing Hallel is Geula. And the question is, what is Geula? And this is where I think that people often make the key mistake. This is the first major point I want to make on the share. When people, if you ask many people, what does it mean that we, the Jewish people, are redeemed? Geula. They'll say Mashiach. Goyal Tzedek. Surely this is our paradigm of Geula. It's a Gemara focused, it's a Torah Shabbal Peh focused Geula paradigm. That's what we mean by Geula. But actually, if you're looking at the world through the lens of Torah Shebichtav, of Tanakh, that is not what Geula means at all. Let me ask you a quiz question. When is the first time in the Torah, that Geula is mentioned? Any ideas when the first time the concept of Goel or Geula is mentioned in the Torah? And the answer is in Bereshis, Hamalach HaGoel Oisi Mikol Ra. That's Yaakov. The concept of Geula is not mentioned anywhere else in Bereshis, and it's not mentioned anywhere else in Shmois, which is phenomenal. As far as I can see, if I made a mistake, then please let me know. But Geula is not mentioned at all in that whole process until you hit next week's parsha, not this Shabbos, but next Shabbos, Bahar. And in Vayikra Chaf Hei, the concept of Geula is mentioned no less than 19 times, which is phenomenal. Because from having never mentioned it at all, apart from one reference, Hamalach HaGoel Esi, the whole concept of Geula is mentioned 19 times in a very short space of time. How? Where? In what context? And the answer is Geula here refers to Geula of land and Geula of independence. Have a look with me at some of these sources. I'm going to quickly do 2, 3, 4, and 5 because they're not, or 2, 3, and 4, they're not the key, but I want you to see how this is repeated time and time again. Ki amuch achicha. If your brother becomes poor, and he has to sell his land, his family achuza, that is part of their family that reverts every Yovel year, but that's their familial land. If they have to sell that, you can always have a goyel, someone who can do geula on that land, who's close to them. They could always buy back that land during the Yovel year. You don't have to wait for the next Yovel. So too, the ish. If he doesn't have a goel, he can get the money together, so he can do his own goel. So too, if a person sells a walled city, they have a year to perform a house in a walled city. They have a year to perform geula. This word geula is used again. What about if a person sells themselves? Look at number 4. If the non-Jews around you in Israel become strong, and your brother becomes poor, and a Jew has to sell themselves as an eved to a geratosha, to a non-Jew, or like a mishpachto ger, mishpachat ger, achrei nimka, after they've been sold, geula tihiyeh lo. There's always a chance for geula. Echad me'echav yigalenu. One of his brothers can redeem him, or dodo. Or ben dodo yigalenu, his uncle, his cousin can redeem him. Or mishabes haro, one of his relatives with mishpachto yigalenu can redeem him. Or he siga yadu v'nigal, or he can get the money together himself and redeem himself. Look how many times these psukim repeat geula, 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 geula. This is the parasha of geula. So what does geula mean? Geula means if you're dispossessed from your land, or you're disenfranchised from your personal freedom, and you get the opportunity to regain your land or regain your independence, that is what the Torah calls Geula. And this is the key point that I want to make just right here at the very beginning. That if somebody has an argument with somebody else about Medinat Yisrael, and they say, I think Medinat Yisrael is Reshit Tzmichat Geulateinu. This is the beginning of our Geula. And then someone else turns around and said, are you crazy? What do you think? Mashiach's nearly here. Look what's going on. The world is nuts. Everything is crazy. The land is run by people who are not necessarily Shomer Shabbos, and the place has got this problem and that problem. This is what you think Mashiach is? And of course, they'll turn around and say, I never mentioned Mashiach. Why are you talking about Mashiach? I'm talking about Geula. Well, isn't that the same thing? The answer is no, it is not the same thing. And therefore, once you take this different perspective, this Torah Shebichtav perspective on Geula, you see that you can have an argument as to whether we are indeed have regained our own independence in terms of our land, have regained some of our own independence in terms of our freedom to act in this world. Then it becomes a real debate. One of the problems is that people are often talking right past each other. That's the problem. Someone says this is Geula, and someone says it's not Geula, and then nobody stops for 5 minutes to turn around and say, well, 1 second, how are you defining Geula? Maybe we're not talking about the same thing. And I think getting this point clear at the very beginning can actually save a lot of heartache. It can help people to realize that maybe they're not arguing at all. The Haredi world and the Datidim Leumi world is arguing, but maybe they're not arguing as much on the specific issues as they think they are, because they're not necessarily defining things the way that each of them assume the other one is. And therefore, that raises the question, therefore, when Chazal talk about Geula, which aspect of Geula are they talking about? Look at source number 5. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, B'Nissan nig'alu, B'Tishrei asidin ligail. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, B'Nissan nig'alu, B'Nissan asidin ligail. Geula will come in Nissan, Geula will come in Tishrei. What Geula are they talking about? Are they talking about some kind of independence? Are they talking about some kind of atzmaut, some kind of retaining of our land or regaining of our land? Or are they talking about Mashiach? So I think that one of the best things that we can do is perhaps push aside the question of Mashiach. Mashiach is obviously a real issue, but Geula and Mashiach are two different things. That's part one, if you like. That's the first focus. The second focus is this whole question of, well, once you do start talking about Mashiach, what exactly do you mean by Mashiach? And that is a fraught question as to how exactly that works. It turns out when you scratch below the surface, people think they know about Mashiach. I mean, before we even talk about Mashiach ben Yosef, let's talk about Mashiach ben David. People think that they understand, oh yeah, I know what's going on with Mashiach. And when you actually ask them, well, what do you think Mashiach will be? How do you think Mashiach will work? People often have a very kind of fuzzy idea. They have something they learned when they were kids in school based on this midrash or that midrash, etc. The first thing you need to do, of course, is learn through the Rambam at the end of Hilchos Malachim, where he gives you 2 entire chapters on what Mashiach, as far as he's concerned, is. And he's only talking about Mashiach ben David. He never mentions Mashiach ben Yosef. We'll see soon in a minute. And then you have to read the fact that the Rambam says, and even though I told you everything I think about Mashiach, I'm not actually sure this is going to happen this way because we don't have any real clarity. Mashiach is by definition confused. There's a fog around our understanding of it. Always has been. From the very beginning, when Yaakov Avinu, according to the Midrash, says, I want to tell you what's going to happen, B'Ketzei Yamin, and then all of a sudden he loses that clarity, that nevuah. And then, of course, you have to learn all of the Kabbalistic commentators who completely don't take the same view as Mashiach, who conflate, who bring together Mashiach and Olam Haba. The Rambam is extremely clear. In Hilchos Tshuva, in Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah, Mashiach and Olam Haba, two completely different things. Mashiach is part of this world, that's why it's not miraculous. Olam Haba is part of the next world, which is why it's completely Lamala Min HaTeva, it's the world of souls, it has no need for Torah, no need for mitzvahs, it's a completely spiritual world. The Kabbalists, I'm sure you're aware, are much less eager to separate Mashiach and Olam Haba. The Kabbalists are much more ready to kind of merge this idea of Mashiach and Olam Haba so that you end up with an understanding of Mashiach, which is somewhat supernatural, like a Gan Eden, it's physical, it's spiritual. Just like, by the way, if you're a Kabbalist, you're more open to the idea that a malach can have a human body or a human appearance. This is not our share for today, but it's a fascinating topic. Can you have dinner with a malach? So if you ask people, can you have dinner with a malach? They'll say, of course you can. Avram Avinu, all the old people looking at their wives here saying, of course, every night I have dinner with a malach. Maybe not. I don't know, whatever. They want to put words in your mouth. The Avram Avinu has dinner with a malach. What are you talking about? Of course you can. You read the Rambam in Merion Nevuchim on that particular topic, you'll see he goes ballistic at the idea that you can have dinner with a malach, because the physical and the spiritual worlds are completely separate and you cannot conflate or confuse them, which is, of course, a Kabbalistic idea that you do. Therefore, before I even talk about Mashiach ben David, which I'm not going to talk about in this share at all, because it's not my topic at all, just understand that Mashiach ben David is more complicated than people think. But let's talk about Mashiach ben Yosef, because that is the next fascinating level. Once we've talked a little bit about Geula, let's look at this idea of Mashiach through perhaps a different lens. The fact that the Rambam completely ignores it is very strange, because it's a mainstream topic. It appears in Chazal, it appears in Poskim, it appears in Rav Saadia Gaon, who is also a rationalist thinker, and therefore the Rambam, it's a whole study what he thinks about this. But let's have a look here in source number 6. If you look with me, please, source number 6, I'm here at the side here. I hope everyone's with me. Source number 6, let's read it together. Vayre'eni Hashem arba charashim. Says Zechariah, God showed me 4 charashim. It's a charash. So if you look just down for a second in Rashi, in number 7, charashim, says Rashi, is umnim. Workman, craftsman. There are 4 different craftsmen that Zechariah sees in his vision. Go back to number 6, please. Says the Gemara, the first follows. Ma'inenhu arba charashim. Who are these 4 craftsmen? Amar Rav Chana bar Bnei, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Eliyahu, and Kohen Tzedek. An interesting group of 4 people. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben Yosef, Eliyahu Hanavi, and Kohen Tzedek. So again, look in Rashi for a second. Number 7 says Rashi. Why are these individuals craftsmen? What do they have to craft? So he says the following: Mashiachin shneim charashim lebinyan beis hamikdash. So of course the Mashiachs have to build a beis hamikdash. Now that's interesting. It sounds from Rashi that Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef will each have to build a beis hamikdash. Is that together? Is that separate? And by the way, how does that fit with the famous Rashi that talks about the beis hamikdash coming down from Shemayim? Why are people building it if it's already there? But somehow or other, these 2 Mashiachs have to build a Beis Hamikdash. Eliyahu charash even. Okay, Eliyahu had to craft stone. Shebana mizbech b'har Carmel. He had to build a mizbech. And we know that Eliyahu is coming in the future, which is interesting because the Rambam, again going back to the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, he says some people say that Eliyahu Hanavi is coming, but I'm not sure. He says maybe he is, maybe he isn't. In other places, the Rambam says he definitely is, but let's leave that for now. The Kohen Tzedek is Shem ben Noach. I'm not getting into Shem. He's a craftsman. Why? He has to make an ark with his dad, but he also has to build a mizbech afterwards, not for now. But the Gemara you see here clearly refers to 2 Mashiachs, Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef, both of whom it seems will have to build, will have to prepare and build in some way for what we're going to need, B'yemos HaMashiach. And we'll see this in more detail very shortly. Let's look at Yeshaya. One of the key fault lines in the Jewish people from the very beginning has always been Yehuda versus Yosef. This already comes into play in the Sefer Bereshis, where Yehuda and Yosef have this confrontational relationship. It's already in Leah and Rachel. Before that, it's already, if you trace it way back, it's already built into Adam 1, Adam 2, without getting into all of that. But Yehuda and Yosef is this constant scar on the Jewish people, this line that we never seem to be able to fix together. And one of the key things about Mashiach, whichever Mashiach it is, we'll see right now, is that line becomes much more healed. That rift becomes healed. Look at number 8 with me. For Sarakinat Ephraim, says Yeshaya, in those days, he's talking about Mashiach, the jealousy of Ephraim will go away, but Sayrei Yehuda Yikaresu, and those who want to attack Yehuda will go away. This is talking about internal within the Jewish people. Ephraim lo yikana et Yehuda, v'Yehuda lo yitzor et Ephraim. Ephraim will not attack Yehuda, will not be jealous of Yehuda. Yehuda will not afflict Ephraim. Says Rashi, who is this? Mashiach ben Yosef or Mashiach ben David lo yikanu zeh ozeh. Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David have to be able to live with each other, have to be able to coexist. That is one of the key signs that Yemos HaMashiach, we'll see you soon, Yemos HaMashiachim, okay, that these 2 forces are able to live together. Someone's coming online. You had a question? Nope. Okay, fine. If you have a question, then please let me know. But for now, I will continue. Fine. Even in Chumash as well, the Targum Yonason, or Targum Yuchas Yonason, we're getting into that now, jumps into this here on number 9. Number 9 talks about the anointing, the Mashiach, the Mashiach of the Kior. Look at number 9 in Sefer Shemot. Umashachta et Kior. You have to anoint the Kior, the et Kano, the Kidashtot. Now, there's the Targum Yonason as follows. Look at this beautiful Targum. Again, Mashiach ben Yosef coming right into the main frame. The Tarabiyat Kiora, you have to purify the Kior, says the Targum. This is what it means. V'yat basise, and its base. Kadesh Yatei, and you have to make it holy. Yeshua, because of Yeshua, Meshumshan Achraba the Sanhedrin, because of you, this is all related to Yeshua, the main Gabbai, if you like, the main secretary of the Sanhedrin, the Imei, okay, who's with Moshe, the Al Yadoi Asida Are Yisrael it Palaga, that in the future Israel is going to be divided by Yeshua. He has to be part of this. Umashiach bar Ephraim, and Mashiach ben Ephraim is Mashiach ben Yosef, the Nafik Bnei, who will derive from Ephraim, from Yosef, the Al Yadoi Asidim Beis Yisrael Menatzcha. And in the future, Mashiach ben Yosef will be the one that saves the Jewish people, Legog, from the victory over Gog, Ulitziate, and who are with him, Besoif Yomaya, at the end of days. So you see here that Mashiach ben Yosef is really very important, it seems. Mashiach ben Yosef is in the Gemara. Mashiach ben Yosef is in the Targumim. Mashiach ben Yosef seems to be a very critical part, and Rashi picks this up again and again, of what it means that we have to expect the idea of Mashiach coming, which again makes it even more of a pella that the Rambam never even mentions Mashiach ben Yosef in his understanding of Mashiach. But again, leave that to one side right now. Fine. Sorry. I'm just trying to do something else. Just mute everybody. Good. Okay, fine. Let's go back to the screen and let's have a look. We talked about confusion and the idea of that being part of Mashiach, and we'll build all this together as we go through, and we'll put Mashiach ben Yosef into that as well. Geula is a complicated thing. We talked about Geula being the restoration of some of our independence. And by the way, quite how much independence you need for it to be Geula is an interesting question. Maybe just I'll mention this just for a second. The Gemara in Megillah asks, why don't we say Hallel on Purim? Why do we say Hallel on Purim? Purim is a Geula, right? So it's said in Pesachim, when there's a Geula that comes to the Jewish people, you have to say Hallel. So we don't say Hallel on Purim. We say Hallel on Chanukah, but we don't say Hallel on Purim. So why do you say Hallel on Purim? So the Gemara gives three answers. This is just in parentheses. The three answers are as follows. Number one, you can never say Hallel on a Geula that happens outside Eretz Yisrael. And of course it happened in Shushan. Okay, fine. Answer number one. Answer number two is, we do say Hallel. What are you talking about? We say Hallel, which is the Megillah. Megillah is Bimkom Hallel. The reading of the Megillah is the equivalent of Hallel. It's even better than Hallel. And answer number three is, this is not a sufficient Geula. Purim doesn't work. Chanukah works. Chanukah is a Geula, but Purim is not enough. Why? Because how can you say Hallelujah, Avdei Hashem? Hallelujah, Avdei Hashem. How can you say that the servants of Hashem should praise Hashem in Hallel? And we're not really the servants of Hashem. We're still the servants of Achashverosh. Naniach in Mitzrayim, we got out. Okay, Paro's dead. He's finished. Or at least he's gone. They're drowned in the sea. Whereas when it comes to Purim, you can't say the same thing. So depending on which answer you take from that Gemara in Megillah will certainly have an impact the way you see Yom Ha'atzmaut. You know, is Yom Ha'atzmaut more like Hanukkah? Is Yom Ha'atzmaut more like Purim? And which answer on Purim? Is it enough of a Geula? Is it not enough of a Geula? But clearly these are the key sources that one needs to be learning. And by the way, there's no safe option. If you don't say Hallel and recognize the Yeshua and the Geula when you're meant to, then that itself is a breach of halacha. And one can't just say, well, I'll err on the safe side and not say anything at all. Okay, but that's a separate issue. Let's have a look at the fog of Geula. Number 11, please. Why do we talk about the idea of Geula, this redemption, in the seventh year, in the Shemitah year? Amar Rabbi, so Rabbi says, okay, so he talks about the Geula and Shemitah obviously go together. Shemitah is a Geula of the land. So he says, because in the future, we will have Geula in the seventh year. That's why the Geula of the land is fixed in the Shemitah year. Fine. Then we have a tradition, B'shishit kolot. In the sixth year, there'll be kolot. There'll be noise. There'll be rumblings of trouble, of war. B'shvit milchamot. And in this year of the Shvi that you said was the year of Geula, there'll be war. There'll be fighting. But Mois Shvi is Ben David Ba. And only after the Shemitah year, then David can come. Says the Gemara now, Milchama nami atchalta de geulahi. And of course, this is a massive topic. You can get to Rav Goren, you can speak about Rav Tzvi Yehuda and other people. Atchalta de geula. Milchama is also the atchalta of geula, the beginning of a process of geula. Because again, the way we're defining geula is if you're trying to regain your independence, the war itself is part of that very struggle. Just the ability to fight the war is itself an expression of that independence. And that's why when there's a discussion again about Yom HaAtzmaut versus Yom Yerushalayim, I used to daven in a shul in London many years ago, which was it wasn't a Zionist shul. I'm not going to get into more details than that. I davened in a few different shuls, so even if you know where I davened in London, you won't know which one it was. But it wasn't a Zionist shul, and they would not say Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, but they would say Hallel on Yom Yerushalayim. Because they said Yom Yerushalayim, that's Nisim Gluim. That was an open miracle. The redemption of Yom Yerushalayim was beyond anyone's expectations, understanding. But Yom HaAtzmaut was a big mess. Yom HaAtzmaut, it was the day after the fall of Gush Etzion. It was the middle of a terrible war where an awfully high proportion of the Jewish people living in Eretz Yisrael were killed. How can you tell us that that is a geula? The answer is because milchama atchalta de geula. Because the milchama is also the beginning of the geula. Okay, so let's move on a little bit faster. What do we know about Mashiach ben Yosef? We know that Mashiach ben Yosef has to die. I'm leading you up here to a very important piece of Rav Kook, which we're going to see for the second part of the share. What does that mean he's going to have to die? Look in number 12. Says the Gemara in Sukkah again, B'yomahu yigdal mispei b'Yerushalayim kemispei hadad rimon b'bekat mikidon. On that day there'll be a terrible hesped, a terrible eulogy in Yerushalayim, just like the eulogy over Hadad Rimon in the Bikat Megidon, Armageddon, Megiddo, etc. V'safta ha'aretz mishpachot levad. Everyone will give, the land will give this hesped, family by family will stand alone. Mishpachot be David levad, David's family will stand alone. V'nesheihem levad, and their wives will stand separately. Completely unrelated, but this is one of the main sources for the idea of separate seating at a chasna. If you think that you should have separate seating at a wedding, then this is one of the key sources, because it's saying that there'll be separate seating at the funeral. If there's separate seating at the funeral, a kal v'chaymer, you have to have separate seating at a wedding. I'm not getting into that now. There's all sorts of different shitas. Some say yes, some say no, but just you heard it here. This Mashiach ben Yosef sugya brings that as well. Fine. Says the Gemara, Hi Speida Maya Vite. What is this great hesped? Gemara in Sukkah. Well, who's giving a hesped over whom? So there's a debate in the Gemara. Pligi Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Rabbanon. Chad Ama al Mashiach ben Yosef Shinerag. Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef is killed. He has to die. Something about Mashiach ben Yosef, who is the builder, who is the Harash, who is building the Mikdash on some level, that has to go. That has to die. And there's going to be a terrible hesped. Says Rav Saadia Gaon, and again, Rav Saadia Gaon is not a Kabbalist. Rav Saadia Gaon is a rationalist, philosophical thinker. He brings this in and says, this is very important. Look at what he says in number 13. I want to tell you, he says, in Emunas V'Deos, there are two ideas that go side by side. What does that mean? If we don't do tshuva, then we'll have all of these terrible problems like Leinu with Mashiach ben Yosef. But if we do manage to do tshuva, then they won't happen. Mashiach ben David pitom, and then we can get straight to Mashiach ben David. Or Mashiach ben Yosef kodim lo, or if we do need Mashiach ben Yosef still, if we get our act together, and if we do it right, he won't be a tragedy, there won't be a hesped, he'll be a shaliach, law for the Mashiach ben David, u'kametaken, he'll be someone who prepares ha'umah, the nation. We need to prepare the Jewish people for Mashiach ben David. You can't just have Mashiach come out of the blue. U'kamesakel haderech, he's paving the way. Mashiach ben Yosef, first of all, doesn't need to be a tragedy, and second of all, the job of Mashiach ben Yosef is to pave the way. So too, we have the same idea in the Orach Chaim on Parshas Balak. He says, Darach Kochav miYaakov, become Shevet Yisrael. And I'm not going to read this all inside, but he basically says that there are two different modes. Either Mashiach will come to Yaakov, in the Yaakov mode, which is a lot of trouble, a lot of problems, a lot of wars, a lot of suffering. Or he can come in Yisrael mode. in which case we don't need that. Mashiach ben Yosef doesn't need to die, etc. Have a look at the end here. About Im Yisrael yu kolon kesadikim, sheb'shem Yisrael yitkanu. As afilu oitza shevit shehu Mashiach haba from Ephraim, even the Mashiach ben Ephraim will come. He will establish. Perish tiyeh lo tkuma. Tkuma is a very Zionist word in today's world. There'll be a strength and establishment here, lifnei oivav, in front of his enemies, v'lo yergenu romanos. Fine. Ultimately, we don't really know exactly how Mashiach ben Yosef will work, and that's number 15, talks about that. The Ramchal, however, I want to use as the springboard into part 2, which is Rav Kook. The Ramchal, however, says the following in his Sforim here, in Sefer Kinas Hashem Tzavakot, Ki Mashiach ben Yosef hu beside hasmo. Mashiach ben Yosef is coming from the left. I don't think he's talking about Yair Lapid or anything like that. I think he's talking about some much deeper Kabbalistic idea. Okay, Mashiach ben Yosef is coming from the small. V'hu besad hachitzonius. This is the chitzonius. This is external. Hatzarich lekol hatikunim ha'ela. We need this external tikkun. We need to build Mashiach ben Yosef before Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David, who be Yisod HaYamin. Mashiach ben David is coming from the Yamin. And they have to join. They have to be connected. V'haga'ula shleima. Interesting. We talk a lot of this about these words. We talk about a ga'ula shleima. What is a ga'ula shleima, says the Ramchal? A ga'ula shleima is a fusion of Geulat Mashiach ben Yosef and Geulat Mashiach ben David. That's what a real Geula is, a full Geula Shalem. So just to reiterate where we've come from, this idea of Mashiach ben Yosef, as we've seen, is in the Gemara, it's in the Targumim, it's in Rashi, it's in Rav Sadigon, with the Ramchal, the Or Chaim, in many mainstream sources. And therefore, it's not surprising that Rav Kook, when Rav Kook comes to Israel in the early 20th century, and he starts to address, as we'll see where in a minute, the issue of Geula, it's not surprising that he brings from these sources. Rav Kook himself, of course, I'm sure people are familiar, is an incredibly interesting fusion, and they say fusion, not confusion, but fusion of different ideas. His mother was a Chabad Hasidah. Okay, his father was a Talmid of Volozhin. That already sounds like a really interesting shidduch. Okay, back in the mid-19th century. He himself learnt in Volozhin, but he had a reputation for being a maskil. People accused him of hanging out with intellectuals, and there's an interesting Maisa that's brought down in Volozhin. Volozhin was not a happy place, you should know, in the yeshiva. There were lots of infighting, lots of factions within it, and there was a group that didn't really like Rav Kook that much, a group of Bochrim. Apart from anything else, he did weird things. He had a beard. Nobody had a beard in those days except the Rosh Yeshiva. And even then, if you remember Rav Scheinberg, it was many years before Rav Scheinberg himself, the Rosh Yeshiva agreed to have a beard. But back in the day, in the late 1800s, who had a beard? Oh, Rav Kook had a beard. As a bocher, as a young man. He also spoke Hebrew, which was very strange. Who spoke Hebrew? He actually invented half the words that he spoke in Hebrew, because there wasn't really Hebrew yet. And in one fascinating incident, they saw that every few minutes he was looking underneath the stender at something. He had something under the stender. He kept looking down at this thing under the stender. So some of the other Bochrim in Volozhin accused him of having newspapers. This is the equivalent of checking your emails or your WhatsApps when you're in the Bet Midrash, okay? They say he's looking at things under the stender. Every now and then he's taking a break from learning and checking his emails. Equivalent. Well, then they reported him to the Netziv, to Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who was a Rosh Yeshiva. And they said, this Bocher, he's got to go. He's checking his newspapers under the stender. And he said, I'm not listening to Lashon Hara. He's one of our top guys. I'm not going to hear about it. Anyway, eventually they broke into his stender. They actually broke the lock, these boys, on his stender to see what he was looking at. And what was he looking at, Rav Kook, back in the day? He was looking at Kabbalistic Shemus Hashem, names of God written on klafim, so that he could get inspiration as he was learning, and he could draw down from shefa, whatever. So you can see already you're dealing with somebody who is not your average bocha in any yeshiva by any stroke of the imagination. So enter Rav Kook to the debate of Mashiach ben Yosef. What's going on here? So actually, before we share that, let me give you a bit of background. Rav Kook came to be the rabbi of Yafo in 1904. He actually landed at the dock in Yafo on Yom Yerushalayim, what would become Yom Yerushalayim. On Chaf Chet Be'iyar, he landed in Yafo, and he walked off the ship to be the Rav of Jaffa. That was the 13th of May. He wasn't just the Rav of Yafo, he was also the Rav of the Moshavot, of the new Yeshuvim that were established around Eretz Yisrael. He was meant to be their Rav as well. And then only less than 2 months later, on the 3rd of July, 1904, Theodor Herzl died. He died quite suddenly. He was a young man. He was still in his 40s. And nobody expected Theodor Herzl to pass away. And of course, it was an absolute disaster for the whole Zionist movement. Theodor Herzl, who'd been the entire instigator of the Zionist Congress, for him to die at this point in proceedings was disastrous. And so they turned to Rav Kook and said, well, you're the new rabbi. We're having a memorial service for Theodor Herzl. You need to give a hesped. We need you to speak about how amazing Theodor Herzl was. So, of course, Rav Kook himself was in an incredibly difficult situation because he himself was already under scrutiny. The new Yishuv saw him and thought that he was part of the problem, not part of the solution, because he looked like the people from the old Yishuv, and he was an Eastern European Rav coming out of Volozhin. And the old Yishuv also looked at him and said he was part of the problem because, he's obviously one of these modern people coming out of Russia with these modern ideas, etc. And therefore, Rav Kook spent a long time trying to keep everybody happy, which of course never really works. You end up keeping nobody happy. But he wanted to avoid this, but couldn't avoid this. He was forced to face this straight away as a junior Rav in Yafo, when he had to give a hesped for Theodor Herzl. So let's have a look. I want you to look with me in 10 minutes. And what I've done is, we could spend a week on the hesped HaGadol, here, the hesped of Yerushalayim. But we're going to spend 15 minutes, which I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it justice. But I brought you here a translation. We're going to skip around a little bit by the translation here is by Betzalel Naor. Rav Betzalel Naor, who is a Rav in America, who's translated many of the works of Rav Kook into English, and good translations as well. Let's have a look at it together. And I want you to just again remember, Rav Kook is giving this in 1904, which is over 115 years ago. So he says, he brings the Gemaras. On that day, the lamentation will be great in Yerushalayim, like the lamentation of Hanerimam in the valley of Megiddo, which of course is Zechariah, which is mentioned in the Gemara in Sukkot. So it came about that throughout the exile, there is a seesaw effect. Look with me here, a seesaw effect of these two opposing forces. At times, he says, actually, maybe I'll make it just a touch smaller than that, sorry. Let's do something in the middle. That'll do. Okay, he says, at times, there is exhibited a drive towards material, worldly success that flows primarily from the foundation of Yosef and Ephraim. Yosef is Hamashbir. Yosef is the one that provides Gashmias, Chitzonius, as we saw in the words of the Ramchal. Okay, that's Yosef. Other times, there is a stirring of the spiritual drive for observance of Torah and spiritual development, for awe and love of God. The Jewish people seesaws between money and Torah, between Gashmias and Ruchnias. Now, says Rav Kook, since it's impossible for our nation to attain its lofty design other than by actualizing these two components, you have to have both. The universal symbolized by Yosef and the distinctive symbolized by Yehuda, because don't forget, the Yosef represents the Egyptian. He represents our face to the outside world. He is the Egyptian with the Egyptian name, Safnat Paneach, with the Egyptian wife, with the Egyptian chariot, with the big house in Memphis, literally in Memphis in Egypt, okay? Whereas Yehuda is in the yeshiva, okay? There arise in the nation proponents of each aspect. Those who would enhance spirituality prepare the way for Mashiach ben David. Those whose focus is final destiny, that's the end. Truly, that's the ultimate say. He says, truly the focus of life is spiritual. That has to be the ultimate focus. Except that the spiritual can only develop properly if it is accompanied by all the material acquisitions of which a full-bodied nation is in need. Those who address the material, general aspects of life prepare the way for Mashiach ben Yosef. So here what he's done is he said that Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David are two groups of people. One group of people is building infrastructure, the Mashiach ben Yosef. One group of people is building ruchnias, is building yeshivas and Torah. They are Mashiach ben David. Now, when these two forces work at cross purposes, when they're fighting as a result of the calamity of exile, and why are they fighting? Because of galut, because we haven't got our head straight in galut, short-sightedness and disarray. These are the birth pangs of Mashiach, or to be more exact, the birth pangs of Mashiachs. The psalmist writes, your enemies have defied, O Lord, they have defied the subjects of Mashiachs, ikvoit Mashiachecha. Two footsteps of two Mashiachs. This is just brilliant. It's a godliness. He says that Chevlei Mashiach is not some kind of war before Mashiach comes. Chevlei Mashiach is the fighting between the two Mashiach ideas that happens in the Jewish people. Now, since the major achievement of Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the general advance of mankind, is to be accomplished by the de-emphasis of a unique form, Mashiach ben Yosef cannot endure. He is destined to be killed. Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the focus on the Gashmias, the focus on building the country, that has to ultimately give way. That has to be taken away. When this happens, says the Rav Kook, all will recognize how perverse the situation is. They will recognize that it was wrong not to subjugate the universal dimension to the spiritual aspect. All the people who think they're building high-tech companies will realize, of course, they need high-tech companies together with Daf Yomi Shirin. They will lament him. They will realize this is wrong as one laments an only son and grieve for him as one grieves for the firstborn son. Now, says Rav Kook, the lamentation for an only child is bereft of hope. Elderly parents, lo Elenu, who have lost their only son are totally forlorn. If the verse were to end on that note, it would spell utter doom. But the bitterness is mitigated by intellect. Why? The nation is not as elderly parents who have lost their only child, but as young parents who've lost their firstborn child. That's what the Pasuk says. Being inexperienced at raising children, they didn't attend properly to the child in a state of illness, so the child succumbed. But that's not the end. The fact that Mashiach ben Yosef dies like a firstborn child is not ultimately the end of the story, because it's just a firstborn child. They can move on. Says Rav Kook, by the same token, the nation comes to realize that it didn't know how to make use of this universalist dimension. We look back and say, oh, we were missing an idea. Didn't understand how it could contribute to Israel's unique destiny. I remember many years ago when Shimon Peres said, my goal is to make Israel the Hong Kong of the Middle East. Exactly what he's talking about. I'm not criticizing. That's Mashiach ben Yosef. He's saying we want it to be like Hong Kong. Okay, great. Maybe you don't want to be like Hong Kong today. Okay, that's a whole different story. But that's the universalism. In that way, it could have survived. The nation labored under the illusion brought about by the divisiveness of exile. These forces are truly at odds. The result is, and listen to this, because this is very strong. If we fight each other, says Rav Kook, on those two Mashiachs, whoever holds up the universal side of the nation becomes an enemy of Torah. The secular Jews become enemies of Torahs and mitzvahs. Contrariwise, whoever focuses on the uniquely Jewish, what does the yeshiva world become? Becomes an adversary of material well-being. They seem to feel that there's some kind of need to be in poverty. In the first scenario, the fence of Torah is broken down. In the second, the result is weakness and morosity. You cannot have two groups of people screaming at each other, he's saying, because they're both flawed, fakely. One is Mashiach ben Yosef fighting Mashiach ben David. You can't have that. And therefore, you can see, by the way, how Rav Kook can quite happily, or not happily, or maybe unintentionally, upset everybody. Basically, he called the secular Zionists enemies of Torah, and he called the old Yishuv weak, morose, sad, etc., lacking in vitality. Anyway, so let's see how he brings it together in the last couple of paragraphs here. Let's go here to the Zionist vision. I hope everybody's with me. The Zionist vision, and again, remember this is 100 years ago. What did Israel look like 100 years ago? How much material infrastructure was there? What did Israel even look like 40 years ago, 30 years ago, compared, Baruch Hashem, to how it looks today? The Zionist vision manifest in our generation might be best symbolized as the footsteps of Mashiach ben Yosef. That's what Zionism, he says. Zionism tends to universalism. It looks out to the world as opposed to Jewish particularism. It is unequipped to realize, doesn't yet know, he's talking about secular Zionism, that the development of Israel's general aspects, the Yosef, is just a foundation for Israel's singularity. The leadership of the Zionist movement must be greatly influenced by the gifted few of the generation, the righteous and the sages of Israel. They've got to talk to each other. On the other hand, the ideal of Israel's national renaissance, including all the material accoutrement which is proper to think joint to spiritual goal, today has not succeeded. He said the secular Zionists have not yet succeeded. And the lack of success has brought about infighting until finally the leader of the movement has fallen. That's Herzl. He tried to avoid speaking about Herzl, but he mentioned him here. A victim of frustration. It behooves us to take to heart, to try and unify the tree of Yosef, the tree of Yehuda, and to rejoice in the national awakening and to know that this is not the end goal of Israel, but only a preparation. This is and this, by the way, this line got Rav Kook into a lot of trouble. This is the benefit to be gained by remorse, the hesped, over one whom we might consider the footsteps of Mashiach ben Yosef. Now, of course, everybody jumped on Rav Kook and said, really? You think Theodor Herzl is Mashiach? And of course, he said, no. How can you not understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that Theodor Herzl's political Zionism represents the idea of the beginning of Mashiach ben Yosef, to create the land, the infrastructure that we need in order to be a nation. In view of his influence in revitalizing the nation, materially and generally, this power should not be abandoned. He says, don't abandon Zionism, says Rav Kook. Despite the wantonness and hatred of Torah that results in the expulsion of God-fearing Jews from the movement. By the way, there's a little bit of history there you should know. At this point, the Zionist movement, which worked together at the beginning with the religious Zionists, had thrown them out. And there was a big split between the secular Zionists and the religious Zionists, and the religious Zionists went on to found a movement called Mizrahi. This beautifully comes together, okay, for this presentation. The Mizrahi, meaning Merkaz Ruchani, was focusing on this idea of making a Ruchani home in Israel, not just a physical home. He says, we can't start, he was not happy about this expulsion. And let's just finish here. We must develop the courage to seek that any power that is of itself good be fortified, strengthen all that's good. And if it's lacking spiritual perfection, let us strive to increase the light of knowledge and fear of God such that this light is capable of conquering a powerful life force, etc. Meaning this is classic Rav Kook, early Rav Kook in terms of Israel, months after he arrived, saying what you need to do is create Kodesh Kadoshim by taking Kodesh and merging it with Chol, and through that merger creating Kodesh Kadoshim. There's a lot more to say about that as well. But you see here in this, we haven't done it justice, obviously, we've just touched on it very briefly here. This piece of Rav Kook really brings Mashiach ben Yosef right into the frame, right into the mainstream of the life that we live. When you drive down Begin, when you go on the super fast train, and I know we've all been locked in our houses for the last few months, but in Yetz Hashem, we're going to be blinking into a very new world. Hopefully it'll be in some ways and in many ways an improved world. But when we sit on that train and we zoom across valleys and through hills. By the way, I heard from my son that his Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yaakov Medan, in the Gush says that when he goes on the train, he thinks about the Nevuas, where it says that God will take the hills and lower them down to the valleys and take the valleys and bring them up to the skies. He says, that's the train. The train's flying over our heads and then flying under our feet at enormous speeds. That is, says Rav Kook, and one can only just imagine what Rav Kook would have felt had he been able to see what exists today. That is the emanation of Mashiach ben Yosef. And the challenge, really, as we've seen with all the sources before, is to bring Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David together. I.e., these are not two people we're waiting for. These are people right now that have to build their own mikdash, as we saw in Rashi. Both Mashiach ben Yosef builds a mikdash and Mashiach ben Yosef builds a mikdash. Both of them are essential. And says Rav Kook, and he really enjoins us to take that idea and make it part of our life right here, right now, and take those two Mashiach concepts, bind them together, and heal the rifts within Klal Yisrael. That's and that's not just a pie in the sky. That's a real thing that can really happen in all sorts of ways. And especially in these times when we see people are a little bit frustrated sometimes between one community and another community, it's really critical that the agenda that we work on is trying to build together. It's trying to say, fine, let's be Mashiach ben Yosef, let's be Mashiach ben David, let's put them together, and together we'll build something which is much more what we had in mind for the ultimate geula of the Jewish people. So this is just a taste of again, let's go back to the title of the shir. Redemption, confusion, the state of Israel, and Mashiach ben Yosef. All of these things come together, a more sophisticated, hopefully, idea of geula, where geula just doesn't mean waiting for some Mashiach to fly out of the sky. Geula means retaining our independence, regaining our physical freedom as well, where Mashiach is not just some flashbang thing that's going to happen one day, turn on a dime, but it's a process that's going to involve two Mashiachs and them working together and building together in that way. And hopefully what we can do is just incorporate those ideas and make Mashiach really a part of our everyday lives, not just something we say we daven for, but we don't really understand. And I think therefore, to me anyway, it makes it much more real. Okay, I've talked in such a monologue for the last hour. Although I don't think we had any, Baruch Hashem, we had any problems with the Zoom, right? Unless I've just been talking to myself for the last hour and nobody's been listening at all, which is always possible. Thumbs up. Okay, excellent. Thank you. So, do we have any questions? I'm happy to unmute everybody and see if there's any voices at the end of the cameras. If not, then I'm happy to take emails or WhatsApps.
Okay, may I say something?
Yes, of course you may say something.
This is Iram. On behalf of Bnei Akiva, I wanted to thank you and the Aluls for putting this together and just mention the way, paraphrasing what you just said, about Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David coming together in order to build something. I appreciate the fact that Lower Merion and Bnei Akiva were able to come together in order to bring this, and hopefully we'll be able to do this in a more normal way when we can all get together and we'll be able to all join together in the near future.
Bezrat Hashem. Amen. I hope so. We'll keep talking, that's for sure. And once there are planes running, we'll work something out. Please God.
I have a very small technical question.
Yes.
Yes, this is Ruth. On when you mentioned, I can't find the source sheet right now, but on the Targum Yonatan,
yes,
I think that it may be when it says the Mashiach ben Yosef is a descendant of him. I think the him is not Ephraim. I think the him is Yoshua.
Yeah, sure, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Yoshua is from Shevet Ephraim. Yes, I agree with you, 100%.
Yeah. No, it wasn't clear when you translated.
Yeah. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. Then I apologize, but absolutely. Where was it here? The
Nafik Bnei, right here.
The Nafik Bnei, the Nafik from Yoshua. Yeah. Yes, I agree with you 100%.
All right, thank you.
1,000%. Okay, good. Okay, well, I will wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you again to Ruth and to the team that put this together. Really, I appreciated it. And please God, we should enjoy Yom Ha'atzmaut. We should be healthy and well. All those who need a refuah shalema should have a refuah shalema. Should be a source for them. And please God, you and your family should emerge well from the crisis, and we should meet together, if not in Yerushalayim, at least in Philadelphia.
I wanted to just say thank you to Rabbi Manning again for a very interesting, inspiring and topical shiur, and also to Bnei Akiva V'lo Merion for sponsoring, and to World Mizrahi for organizing. So thank you again, and we hope to see you again, please God.
All the best. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Have a great day.